Hello Year 5. I thought I'd carry on reading Floodland because I know Marcus Segwick was doing it himself, but I noticed that a lot of you were actually viewing my videos on YouTube, so I thought it's always nicer if it's someone you know reading the story, so I thought I'd carry on. So before the holidays we met the character of Zoe in our book Floodland by Marcus Segwick, and she was living in Norwich, but Norwich was flooded, so she eventually was getting worse, and her parents left on a boat, accidentally leaving Zoe behind, so Zoe had to fend for herself. And during this time, over the years, she found a boat, she managed to escape, and she landed on the Isle of Eels. And now I asked you on a map to look where you think this could be. I eventually pointed you towards a place called Ely, which is not too far from Norwich. And she said she'd landed on what looked like a floating cathedral. And if you looked in Ely, they do actually have a cathedral. And in the last video, in the link below the video in the comments, I put a link to Ely Cathedral, and you can do a virtual tour. So I asked you to have a little look around Ely Cathedral on the virtual tour just to see what it looks like, because I think it'd be really good to kind of imagine where Zoe is in your head. In the last chapter, Sarah and Molly were two girls that were inside the cathedral, and they weren't very nice to her and had upset her by saying that her parents had left her on purpose and didn't want her anymore. So that's where we're up to, and she's been locked inside overnight because there's a curfew, which means you're not allowed to go out after a certain point. A bit like lockdown. Okay, so chapter 3. Zoe ate some foul food. She slept that night on a narrow wooden pew. She had no sheets and had to use a mouldy hassock as a pillow, but she slept long and deep. She dreamed a strange mix of dreams. She was in a small boat, far out to sea. Her mother and father were there too, and Dooby, and Natasha, who suddenly stood up and rocked the boat from side to side. Remember, Natasha is her friend that she'd made on Norwich. Zoe screamed at her to stop, but the boat tipped and they fell into the huge freezing ocean. She woke up feeling a pain in her ribs, as though someone was kicking her. Someone was kicking her. "Get up," said Spat. "I want to talk to you." He gave Zoe another prod in the ribs with his boot. "Stop it," yelled Zoe, sliding off the pew. "What do you think? Listen to me. I know you're a spy. I don't know where you're from, but you haven't fooled me, even if Dooby thinks you're... Look, I told you, I don't know anything about cats or pigs. You know their names all right, don't you?" "Only because you told them to me." Spat was looking like he meant trouble. He stepped up to Zoe's face. "Don't be smart. You ain't so clever. If you think you can get into his good books, then think again. I'm Dooby's eyes and ears round here, so don't get any big ideas." "Hey, don't worry. I don't want to be anybody's nose wiper." Spat hit her hard in the stomach. Zoe hadn't been ready and went down easily. She crawled away, but Spat advanced. "You little..." Zoe had done her share of looking out for herself in Norwich, but she'd never really been much of a fighter. Spat went to kick her again, but Zoe swung her legs and knocked Spat's standing foot from under him. He fell. This gave Zoe time to get up. By the time she had, Spat was already coming at her again. Surprised, Zoe leapt backwards. "Stop," she shouted, but Spat was clearly in no mood to stop. He swung a fist and Zoe leant to one side. The blow caught her, but only just. It was enough to send her to the floor again. And then Spat was on her, legs pinning her arms to the floor, and his hands tightening around Zoe's throat. She tried to struggle, but she was just too weak from his sea crossing. At the back of her mind, there was a desire to give up. It was such a struggle anyway these days. Suddenly, Spat flew backwards off Zoe's chest. Zoe tilted her head back to see Dooby looking at her upside down. Dooby nodded at Zoe and then away, indicating that she should make herself scarce. Zoe hobbled off, feeling the bruises already rising on her neck. As she went, she heard Dooby approach Spat. "I told you to keep your hands off her. Look, I'm sorry, Dooby, but she's a spy. I'm sure of it." He didn't have time to finish his sentence. Zoe looked back to see Spat being haled across the floor again. Dooby wasn't large by any means, and really he was pretty thin. He clearly knew some hideous ways of fighting. Zoe saw her chance. She hadn't got any food to take, but she wasn't going to hang around. It was time for her to find her way back to Leica and get away. She crept down the length of the nave, trying not to be seen. Into her mind came her dream. She was convinced she was right about Natasha. Her subconscious were telling her so, rocking the boat and drowning them, and Dooby laughing at it all, even as he went under. Her parents just sat there silently and let it happen, while Zoe screamed at Natasha to sit down. They hadn't even tried to help her. Zoe reached the great front gates of the cathedral. She wasn't sure if the gatekeepers would let her past, but she nodded at them, and they made no move to stop her. They seemed not to care that she was there. She passed them and was in the open-ended porch that led away from the gates. It was dark. Despite the wall of daylight facing her, strange carvings were crumbling away on the pillars either side of her. They disturbed her slightly, and she hurried on. She was just about to stop out of the porch when a voice spoke to her. "Good morning, Zoe." It was William, the old man Dooby had pointed out when she'd arrived. He was sitting in the darkness of the porch. Zoe was unsure what to do. "How do you know my name?" she asked suspiciously. He laughed. "They're all talking about you," he said. "Who?" He nodded back through the doorway. "Everyone. No one can understand why you're not dead." Zoe started to feel the fear coming at her again. "Dooby seems—" "Well, yes, Dooby," said William. There was an uneasy silence for a while. Stupidly, Zoe felt embarrassed. She stood thinking of something to say so she could get away. The old man didn't seem as mad as Dooby had said. She'd have to be careful. "So, where were you going then, Zoe?" "Nowhere," she said hurriedly. "I was just looking for a walk, and anyway, you know, it smells, and—" "No, I mean, where are you going? Where did you come from? That sort of thing." "Oh, well, you know, I'm happy to be an eel. That's fine. If Dooby says so, you know." Then she trailed off. "But I came from Norwich." "Norwich stands trembling on the brink," said William, as if it made sense. "Oh, right," said Zoe. "Or is it on the blink? I can never remember." "Pardon?" said Zoe. "If you do decide to leave," said William. Zoe froze, trying to think of some lie to cover her intentions, but the old man went on. "Then don't try to fly, will you? There was this monk, see, who built a pair of wings. His name was Brother Elmer. This is 1,000 years ago now, I'm talking. He built some wings, like a bird. He thought he could fly. Well, he jumped off the tower, see." Stupidly, Zoe asked, "What happened?" "Well, he died, didn't he? Off you go then." "What?" Dooby was right. The old man was crazy after all. "I said, off you go, on your walk." Zoe hesitated. "Right, thanks," she said. Bye." He didn't reply. She crept slowly out of the porch. As she went, she heard him start talking to himself. Zoe got to the corner of the porch, and then she ran till she had a stitch. It was a cool, misty morning. She thought she knew where she was going, but in running she had lost her way. Still, the island was small. It wouldn't take her long to find like her. All around, the smell of wetness. But Zoe was used to that. Even though Norwich was much larger than this place, nowhere escaped the occasional, especially high floods. At least they had high enough ground now to grow some vegetables there, though. There was something here, just the shells of old houses standing at or in the water's edge, but again, Zoe was well used to that. Sometimes she wondered what life had been like before the sea came. Perhaps it hadn't seemed stupid to build so close to the sea, because perhaps the sea had been a lot further away. She didn't know, and she'd never met anyone who'd been alive when the houses were built, though lots of people could remember when there had been much more land. Her parents had grown up in a different world, but a world that was already in trouble. Even though the sea level was rising, they never liked to talk about it much. Whenever she did manage to get something out of them about the old times, they went quiet for a while afterwards. Zoe had never known those times, though the really serious flooding only started when she was a little girl. She checked around to see that no one was coming after her, then started to walk around the island. She noted the white posts rising from the sea. They had those in Norwich too, marking the sea level, keeping an eye on its latest high tide. She shuddered. She'd been right to leave Norwich. There was limited time left that it could survive, same as this place. She'd just have to take her boat and get away. She knew that there was land to the west, lots of it. It was where most people had headed when the sea came, but that was long ago. And now there were no ships left on Norwich, nor anyone who would have known how to steer them. The stupid, stubborn few who'd stayed had slowly turned into people like those in Cathedral, scrabbling around for wild food or doing a few hours at the allotments to earn something in return. If you were lucky, you might find an old store of food in tins. The labels were never legible, if they were at all, but what was inside was usually still good, except Zoe remembered someone she knew who'd eaten from a tin that had gone bad. It was a risk you had to take. So she knew she probably didn't have much time. Someone would come looking for her soon, but her luck was in. After only 5 minutes, she suddenly recognised where she was. It was the spot where Dooby, Munchkin and Spat had jumped her. She knew her way to the boat easily now. She found the place. The boat had gone. Instantly she realised why the gatekeepers hadn't stopped her. She also knew who had the boat, and she realised too why Molly and Sarah hadn't let her out of sight the day before. She felt angry, stupid too. The sea was all around her. Her boat had gone. There was nowhere to go. She was trapped. Okay, So predictions, what do we think is going to happen next? What do we think Zoe's going to do? Do we think she's going to be stuck there? Do we think she's going to manage to escape? Have a little discuss maybe with someone in your household what you think so far. Have a go retelling them the story so far as well, and what do you think about the characters we've met? What do you think about William? Do we think he's someone who can be trusted? Do we think he's on Zoe's side? Do we think he's on Spat and Dooby and Munchkin's side? Do we think the girls, Molly and Sarah, might show up again? Do you think she will find her parents? Have a little discuss, and then join me for the next chapter tomorrow. Bye.